So hello, everyone. My name is No Seaba, and I'm a marketing leader here at Armanino. We just want to say thank you today for joining us. Today, we'll be covering how to solve the talent wars and the best strategies for longevity with your business and firm. Just some quick housekeeping. I've been in Zooms before, but just a quick reminder that feel free to use the Q&A function below. We'll have an opportunity to do Q&A at the end of the webinar. So you should be able to click in there if you need any help, as well as also that this webinar will be recorded as well. Next slide. And same with audio speakers. If you are able to hear us, let us know, raise a hand, or put something in the Q&A to let us know, and we can always help or check out your audio speakers as well. Great. So first, some announcements before we dive in. The Armanino 2025 Law Firm Compensation, Billing Rate, and Benefits Survey is now open for participants. We are now in all of these locations: New York, Philly, Puget Sound, Kansas City, St. Louis, SoCal, NorCal. And so for 2025, we're officially open. You'll be able to participate through August 19th. And the things that you'll find in the survey are like staffing ratios and head counts, billing rates for attorneys and paralegal, benefits and compensation. So results will be released in early October. If you want to participate or buy the survey for 2025, we'll make sure to put a link in the post-webinar email as well. And then some upcoming events. So we are hosting 2 roundtables. One is happening on July 15th in LA in person. Another one is happening in Philly, also in person, Law Firm Roundtable. And then we are having an AI webinar on August 20th. Both the LA and Philly roundtables will cover AI. So sign up. Again, we'll put a link in the post-webinar email, but we'd love to see you guys in person. Okay. And now to dive into today's presenters. So today we have Kelsey Campbell, who's a director in Armanino's Business Outsourcing Services practice. As a finance and accounting director, Kelsey has over 6 years of experience creating efficiencies, cultivating growth, and expanding profitability within companies. She also has experience in a multitude of client industries, startups through pre-IPO, US, and international companies with both privately and publicly held entities. Her industry experience includes technology, education, advertising, creative agencies, film and television production, real estate, retail manufacturing, and cannabis. And then I'm also proud to introduce Diane DeCesar, who is a partner at Armanino and a seasoned expert in mergers and acquisitions with a robust background in business, accounting, and financial planning. She applies her diverse skill set to support S corporations, partners, and individuals through complex transactions. Diane's team specializes in designing succession and transition models that optimize cash flow while minimizing tax exposure and risk. Their services include comprehensive tax planning, cash flow analysis, and financial review of transaction documents, ensuring that clients are positioned for long-term success. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kelsey, who will kick off our webinar today.
Awesome. Thank you, Nosayaba. So today's webinar is Understanding the Talent War, and we've broke it down into 3 sections. So first, we're going to specifically talk about people and retention. Then we're going to talk about some successful business strategies for mitigating the talent war. And then we're going to cover future state succession, transition planning, and how all of that plays into the talent war. So first, we're going to start with retention. So we're going to talk about the current market, how to win top talent, how to keep top talent, and some creative solutions that you can deploy in order to keep employees. So as everyone knows, hiring in today's environment is a challenge, especially for the employer. The market is starting to shift back to an employer-friendly market, which means that hopefully it's not quite as intense and not quite as much competition as it has been over the past 5 years. So overall, there's a really high demand for top talent. There's less and less people who are working hard, who are really driven. And so the market for those people has really intensified, which also means that acquiring this top talent is costing businesses a lot more. And so, like I mentioned, the last 5 years have really been a market for employees. So employees have been able to negotiate with current employers, future employers and really drive up their price for coming to companies. And so right now, that still is prevalent in the market, but we're really starting to see it shift back into an employer-centric market where hopefully the competition, the high salaries isn't as prevalent as it has been. The other big issue with understanding the talent war is the evolving expectations of employees. So had we had this conversation 6 years ago, the concept of remote work, the concept of flexible schedule wouldn't necessarily have been as it is today. So one of the biggest things that employees are looking for, especially top talent, is flexibility in their schedule, flexibility in their hours, flexibility in going back to the office versus working from home. This is, again, one of the other topics that has really favored the employees over the last 5 years. But we are seeing a major shift of people back to the office, of some sort of consistent schedule, but it's hard to keep up with the employees' expectations. One day you might have an employee who's your best employee and they come to you and say, I want to work from home, and you say no. And the next day they say, well, this company will let me. So it's figuring out how to have those conversations, how to have a fair and equitable expectation for all of your employees, and figuring out how to prioritize what at what times in order to stay competitive and to keep that top talent. And then the last struggle is all around retention. So how do you keep your strong employees? How do you keep them happy? How do you keep them challenged? How do you continue to give them opportunities for success and excelling? And so it's figuring out, do you do that through creative solutions? That's remote work, whether that's special types of compensation plans. How do you make sure that the employees that are most important to your business are working for you and your company? So the current labor demands, when companies are looking to hire new people, there's a couple of things that they need to prioritize when considering making those new hires. So when you're hiring a new employee, whether you're a law firm and you're hiring an associate, or you're a creative agency or a PR firm and you're hiring an account executive, you need to make sure that before you start the hiring process, you have clear duties and roles defined for this new person that you're trying to bring on. Sometimes when you find a really great person, you want to just bring them on no matter what, and you'll figure out the work later. But in today's environment, it's super important that you have a plan of how you're going to use this employee, what they'll work on, and what their long-term path looks like at your company, because that's important to all of the top talent. The other thing that employers need to be mindful of is being flexible. We're all in the professional services industry here, and client experience and client satisfaction is number one for all of us. And so sometimes we get to a point where certain clients aren't happy with the team. Certain clients want only that person who is your top performer. So it's figuring out how to balance your teams and figuring out how to accurately represent your company and represent the team when you're working with them. So if you have to make a pivot, how are you going to make that pivot? Do you want to make a pivot so that a client's happy, and that means bringing on someone else? It's thinking about all of those things as you go through the new hire process. And then the last thing is building a talent pipeline. So do you have talent internally? And Diane's going to talk a lot about this later. Do you have talent internally that you want to pass the business on to, or that you see as part of the future? And if you don't, how can you recruit people who can be part of that succession for your company? So when you're recruiting new employees, it's looking at, okay, where do we see this person today, in 5 years, in 10 years? And do we think that they'll be a good addition to the company over the long term and help with our growth plans? So the next thing we're going to talk about is strategies for longevity. So this is where it requires a lot of flexibility on the employer side. So sometimes you have to create a little bit of a new structure. Everyone did this 5 years ago with the hybrid work environment. People are doing this now with condensed schedules. Some people are working 4 days a week as opposed to the traditional 5 days a week. So it's making sure that you have different offerings that make sense for your company and for the talent that you're trying to keep. The last thing is also providing the right tools for your employees and promoting good workplace culture. So you want to make sure that everyone has access to training, has access to a collaborative environment where they feel like they're a part of the team, their voice is being heard, they can really learn and help grow the company. Because when employees feel a part of it, they want to stick around and they care about the success of the company beyond just them and their personal role. And culture is important. I think a lot of people talk about culture. Culture is always a priority for companies. And it doesn't always have to be a big company-wide culture effort. Sometimes it's the more intimate teams, making sure that the small teams that people work with, the clients that they work with, you foster the culture in those small environments so that people feel really a part of things.
One thing we found that works here is actually having a coach for each individual person so that they have someone that they could go to. And then the important thing as the employer is to give those coaches training on how best to approach those people to keep them to grow and to hear what individually they may need, especially for your top talent. So something for you to focus on in the future. I'll take this one. Thanks, Kel. So, how do you look at the future state and what financial strategies you should put in for that talent and for your company as a whole? So one of the things that we've created at Armanino is a financial model that can actually help you forecast the future and the future outcomes for the firm, for the current owners, for future owners, more importantly, as you're talking about your top talent. So looking at the entire picture on ownership structures, metrics, by using the model, we can help you forecast where you're going and that those items can help motivate people to grow into your ownership model.
Okay. Next, just sort of a recap. So retention is really one of the keys to winning the talent war. You want to keep that top talent. You want to figure out how you can recruit that top talent. You want to make sure that they're being challenged from both a growth perspective and professional development perspective. You want to make sure that you have coaches mentoring people. You want to make sure that you have competitive salaries, and you want to make sure that you have some creative solutions to keep that top talent so that you can continue having growth within your company in the future. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about successful business strategies and how to employ those in your company to make sure that you can prepare financially in order to retain that top talent that you're looking for. So one of the biggest things has to do with tracking your pipeline. So we see with a lot of our clients, they know new clients that they're working to get, but they aren't always tracking it in a meaningful way that's measurable. And so it's really important to establish a pipeline of potential clients, whether that's people you've had one conversation with, whether that's a possible client that you've been nurturing a relationship with. You want to track that in different ways. So there's different customer resource management tools that you can use. Some of them are like a Salesforce. Others also track it in Excel. Maybe you feel like your business isn't at the point where you need a full CRM solution. Track it in Excel, but make sure that you're tracking it. The other strategy when it comes to tracking your pipeline goes back to retaining key talent. What incentives do you have for employees to bring in business? If an employee is bringing on new clients, are you giving them a bonus related to the new clients that they're bringing on? One of the things that we also talk about a lot is beyond just bringing new clients in, how are you rewarding team members for retention of current clients? It's really easy for clients to pick and choose and go to different firms and companies based on price or based on performance. But what are you doing to reward your employees that are keeping clients year after year? They might be a great client that you win one day, but if that client only lasts for a year, the value of that client is a lot less than a client that the team has been able to retain year after year for 5, 10, 15 years. So making sure that you have incentives not only for new business, but also for retention of clients. And then the last thing that you should be looking at with your pipeline is, where are your referrals coming from? Are your referrals coming from certain attorneys? Are your referrals coming from friends in the industry? It's really important to have the referral system go both ways. So track who you get it from. If you're consistently getting referrals from the same person, send them a bottle of wine, thank them, take them to dinner. Make sure that you let them know that you see that they're referring your company and that you value that and you appreciate that. So make sure that that's another thing that you're tracking within your pipeline.
One thing I want to add here is also make incentives for your employees to bring in more talent, right? Depending on which group you're needing, they're out there in the market. They have friends that they went to school with, right? They might have gone to law school with. Give incentives for them to bring talent to your firm too, because the more they have opportunities and they see that they're helping the company grow, everything is a little stickier and it makes them connect to your company a little bit more.
So next up is just managing your cash flow and forecasting. So if you're a company that's in growth mode or in a company that's trying to retain talent, it's really important to manage your cash flow, especially in our world as professional service companies where we're paying our employees. We're sometimes paying external companies or vendors before we get paid by clients. It's really important to maintain your cash flow. And so the first thing you can do is just identify your basic cash flow needs. You have your fixed monthly expenses like payroll, insurance, rent, things like that. Identify those fixed expenses and build them out in your forecast. Make sure that you know exactly when those are going to hit each month so that you can plan for all of the other variable expenses. Cash flow projections are key. You can do a sophisticated cash flow projection through a planning tool like Adaptive Insights, or you can do a basic one in Excel, which just works just about the same. Build out where your cash is today, what your expectations are on collections, on expenses, and then look at where your cash needs come from. And then scenario modeling. If clients pay on this date, if we take X client on and we know the terms are net 60, how will that impact our cash flow? And build out those different scenarios so that you can see where exactly you're going to be a month from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, if everything goes according to plan. Especially with cash flow beyond just client collections and paying your bills, it's really important for professional service companies to out some sort of credit or financing from a bank. It's really hard when you have to pay people ahead of time and then wait for your collection. So if you can get a line of credit with your bank, use that line of credit and leverage it in situations where you're waiting on payment. Don't let it become something that your business can't operate without, but use it in those weeks where, hey, we know we're going to get a big check next week, but we have payroll this week. Draw on that line of credit and then pay it back next week. If you don't have one, it's a great thing to reach out to your bank and just see if they're willing to give one to you. The other one with cash management and forecasting is having adaptive and integrated technology solutions. So in order to have a forecast, in order to see what your past looks like and your future might look like, you have to have good technology solutions, especially around your financial statements. So are you understanding what your financial statements look like? Do you understand the profitability of your company? Do you understand the profitability of clients? Are you looking at the capacity of all of your team members? Are they highly utilized or are they underutilized? Those are all things that you can do with an integrated technology solution. Sometimes professional service firms, we find ourselves looking at 7 or 8 different softwares and trying to map everything together. If you're using 7 or 8 different tools, how can you find a tool that addresses all of your needs in one? And then the last thing is being strategic about payment terms on deliverables. A lot of our non-attorney professional service clients, you work with big S&P 500 companies who strong arm you in the payment terms negotiation. So fight back a little bit. Net 120 might not be something your company can take on. So how are you still going to attract good clients and manage your cash flow? And the importance of cash flow management means that you can run a successful business, which means you can keep top talent and you can continue to expand and grow to plan for the future. Diane's going to get into some future state now. Diane, you're on mute.
If I don't do that once a webinar, I'm not getting paid, right? So Kelsey, what she just described about all the cash flow modeling and forecasting, that's all short term. You heard her say 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year. So now we're going to look into the future and how can you help your firms grow for the future? And that's where strategy meets sustainability. So how can you weave together your succession planning needs, your profit sharing you want to share with your employees, tax strategies, cash flow planning, all together to build a long-term resilience for your company? So we've explored various ways. In fact, at one recent roundtable we did, the topic came up about creative benefit packages and how can we work to have that profit sharing, those packages to sustain structures in the future. So these are all just items that we think you should look at. And we're going to first talk about aligning your goals. And when we say start with the end in mind, what does that mean? Well, we want to make sure that there's a strategy for exit of the current owners while keeping the firm financially viable for the current and future owners. We work with business transitions all the time, and we know it's so important to align those personal and business goals. Whether we talk about buy-ins or valuations, having the ability to set the tone from at the top and make sure it's followed to align with those goals is really important. Next slide, Kels. So what is succession planning for professional service firms? Well, it can take a lot of different forms, but one thing we think is really important to start with is reviewing your current operating agreement. Meaning, what have you laid out in a plan document already that's shared by the current owners of your firm for how things should run? And if that was done a while ago, is that the way you still want it to be? And are those financial terms still what you need them to be? Are the ways to bring in new partners what you want them to be? Is the exit how you want it to be, both financially and structure-wise for timing? So really important for you to look at your current agreement and then have discussions on what you want it to be and whether changes are needed in that current agreement. The next thing is, how does the company survive and what are those who are those potential successors and or external options? We have a really strong strategy and transformation team that has years of experience in speaking with owners and interviewing people to make sure that those people that you're choosing for your successors fit the role. And if they don't, what role do they fit? And what type of personality, tasks, skills do you need to actually identify those future people? You know, we've already mentioned aligning your personal and your business goals. And you say, you know, why do we have to talk about personal goals? Because you want to know when your people want to retire, how long they want to stay. Those people that are up and coming, do they want to make partner? What are their goals? Make sure you talk to them and make sure you know what works for them, for their growth, so that you can give it to them. All back to what Kelsey was talking about, retaining the talent, right? And the last thing is the items we were talking about, which is, do you want to do a firm valuation? And what are the financial forecasts? So you can truly show, can your company afford what it is you want to do? And if not, you tweak it. We had one recent plan where upon the first interview stage, the goals of the company were to give 10% bonuses to all the people because they're really important to the company and growth. But then we talked about the exit of the current owners and the salary needs and requirements for the younger owners and bringing in new owners. And we realized that all the desires weren't financially feasible. So then we were able to go in and provide what our model does is provide changes in terms easily once we build a model for your company to see what combination of goals work in order to fit your needs the best. Next slide, Kels. So then, you know, we've talking about succession. So what are those options? So there are the internal promotions, external hires. There's mergers and acquisitions. Do you want to merge with a company? Do you want to sell to a company? Do you want to buy another company to grow, to have successors brought in from another firm, right? And then what's the timing of all this? Is it gradual? Is it an immediate need? And again, you got to weave all those things in with the personal goals. It's really important that you structure things so that the leadership changes don't impact your firm. And that's one of the goals in overall, I'll say, successful succession planning. So we really have talked about these topics, but this is really establishing the baseline and how do you do that? So one way to do it is to have evaluation done. Another way to do it is you have an estimate. You've had conversation. You probably know people in your industry. What are firms going for? Do you use a 1 EBITDA? Do you use a 5 EBITDA? What's happening? And try to conduct a baseline of that valuation. And then use growth from there. And this can all be done internally without extra cost to your company. What kind of growth do you see? If you don't know what that is, take a look at your last 5 years growth. Use some kind of average or use what you know of the future state And then from there, we could help build a forecast of your tax flow, as well as the tax implications if someone leaves. And there's planning around those tax implications. Do you try to get those people out where they're picking up ordinary income and the company is getting a deduction? Or do you want to do it so that they're selling their business and having capital gains, whereas there might not be a tax benefit to the company in that instance? So again, we have to align all of these financial strategies along with all of your goals. And in the end, we hope that it results in a successful growth and transition for owners that want to be transitioned out. So what does the end result look like? It's a firm that's financially stable, tax efficient, and ready for the future, with the hopes that all this planning will help everyone's legacy thrive. And I think that might be our entire presentation, but we were really excited for questions and hopefully we can provide answers. No, Sayaba, do you want to jump on?
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Diane and Kelsey. Great presentation. Before we jump into this first question, just want to remind you guys to use the Q&A function below. If they haven't covered anything, if you have a burning question, please make sure to submit it. So hopping into this one, how can execs use QSBS?
So I'll take that one, Kels. So first of all, thank you for those of you who signed up and sent questions in advance. We're thrilled. QSBS, for those who don't know, is qualified small business. Okay. And qualified small business allow people to sell their companies if they qualify with an exemption for gain. Most service companies do not qualify, but not all service companies don't qualify. So it's really important you speak with an expert so that we could help with what qualifies. How do we get you there? If there's any off bands where you're not looking like you're qualifying, there's things you can do to get qualified. So it's a very law heavy topic on what qualifies or not. And we have two great experts in our firm that deal with this and are up on all the case law so that if there is an opportunity for your business to qualify, they'll be able to help and tell you.
Yeah. Thank you, Diane. What role should pre-hire due diligence play in the decision-making about identifying and assessing the best hires?
This was a good question. So pre-hire due diligence. So I think you always want to make sure that the person you're looking at recruiting that you've been eyeing aligns with your company. So looking at their current employer, are they required to work in the office? If the answer is no, but you do require that, is that going to align with your company's goals and strategies? Do they look like someone that moves around every couple of years? Like, is that going to align with your company's long-term goals and strategies? So really making sure that your recruiting team knows what you're looking for, that you're looking for long-term talent that's going to be hardworking, loyal, driven. If that's what you want, make sure they know that and that they can identify that in their screening of candidates, both on their LinkedIn and resumes, but also in that pre-call that your recruiting team has before it makes its way to your desk.
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. And it reminds me of what Diane was saying earlier about making sure that like the talent that you're hiring, their personal goals might also align with your business goals, right? And so part of that comes into that like pre-hire due diligence that we're talking about. Great. All right. How can we expand the candidate base?
So this is, I think, always a top question for companies looking for new talent. So part of it is what we talked about earlier in making sure you have clearly identified how you're going to use the person, what you need this new hire for before going out to recruit. Expanding the candidate base is hard because sometimes you have a very ideal candidate in mind, but you might find someone that's a little bit different. So initially, like having your recruiting team have a wider hiring criteria, like if you're a law firm, maybe you only want to recruit from like AM Law 100 and 200 firms, like maybe expand that list. If you're a creative agency, maybe you only want to recruit from someone who's already worked at a creative agency. Maybe expand that and rely on social media. Social media is key, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Apple ads, Google ads, whatever, use that in helping with your recruiting process. If your company has a really good presence online, that also helps to attract new talent. See who's clicking on your LinkedIn posts and see if those are people that you might be interested in that historically you wouldn't have considered as a candidate. The other thing that we'll use is relying on a staffing company. So maybe your internal team isn't able to find the candidates because they have too narrow of a lens. So maybe work with a staffing company to either find talent or give you temporary talent that you can use to bridge the gap between today and finding the perfect candidate.
Can I add something there,
Yeah.
Kels? So using the staffing company, sometimes people think it's a bad thing. I'm going to tell you, I sit in Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, it's really important for people who are being recruited to be recruited by people who are from Philadelphia. So sometimes if you don't have your recruiting staff actually located in the location that you're trying to recruit, it might be a benefit to use a staffing company that's in that location because they might know how that location best seeks, successful clients, successful candidates.
Yeah. And then also just relying on like your company's presence online. Get creative with how you're posting the new jobs. Like maybe don't do like the traditional, like looking to hire, like do something fun and exciting so that people see it and you all stand out.
And then I'll add again, and use your people to send the message out. Make sure they're sending the message out. They use their social media platforms to recruit for you also.
Yeah. And I will also add to that, it's been really cool to see on LinkedIn. Like, it's one thing to make a job posting, but to have actually like someone on the team make an actual like LinkedIn post to be like, hey, we're hiring for this position. Do you know anyone? Tag them in the comments, drop their LinkedIns, like exactly what Diane was saying, like use your community to help bolster and get these positions filled. Great. Next slide. I think we hit on this a little bit, but if we want to expand, how important is compensation and retaining talent?
I think like 2 years ago, we would have said it's the number one thing in retaining talent. But I'd like to challenge that and say, maybe you can't be the top of the market on compensation, but you can be the top of the market on all of those other metrics that we were talking about. You can have the best company culture. You can prioritize growth and opportunity for your employees. And if you're able to offer everything but the highest paid compensation, you might still be able to keep and retain the top talent. And it's making sure people feel appreciated. It's not always just like giving them financial compensation for appreciation, but telling them, talking about it to other team members, making them feel celebrated, I think goes a long way. Diane, I don't know if you have anything here.
I want to add something. Something that Armanino does that keeps talent here is really have worked. We have a group called The Bridge and another program called Employee Access Plan to give employees access to higher level mentors. And those things to try to focus on people who need different schedules, people who need a small, slight off ramp, still giving them opportunities to grow has really been important to a lot of the people at our company and reasons why they stay. Not that we're not in the top for compensation, but those extra benefits for certain core groups are really important. So putting your time and effort into those cultural things that Kelsey mentioned earlier, that your company can do to really be sticky, right? You want to do the more touch bases you have with your employees that keep them tied to your firm, the better.
Great. Thank you. All right. This is our last question. Again, if you have anything, if you want to ask anything, don't forget to use the Q&A box below. So this question is, should companies budget and plan for a 2 to 3 year turnover for positions under manager moving forward? It seems like that is a tolerance for most younger professionals. Any thoughts?
This is sort of a yes, but question. So yes, that definitely does seem to be the landscape right now. People give it a solid 2 to 3 years and they go somewhere else to make more money. I think a lot of that is just related to the environment over the last couple of years being definitely more an employee-friendly market than an employer-friendly market. I think it's always important to budget for some portion of turnover. I think that if you feel at your company that every 2 to 3 years you're losing all employees, There might be some other things to address on the culture side of things, but I think it's also making sure like culture and these programs aren't a one-time thing. Like you don't just say like, oh, everyone has a mentor. You have to make sure everyone has a mentor. You can't just say we have great culture. You actually have to do things to create that culture. And all of those things will help to like keep people, I think, beyond those 2 to 3 years. Part of it is just like the younger generation has less of a tolerance for things that I think pretty soon they're going to have a tolerance for it. But yeah, it's making sure that you're not just relying on compensation, but those other things. And when you say you do them, actually do them, because those are the things that keep people around. But it's always probably good to budget for it a little bit.
I just have one more thing. When I see the question with a number of years in it, 2 to 3 year turnover, it makes me think about companies setting defined goals for promotion years. So you don't make until 2 years. You don't make supervisor for 4. You don't make manager to 6. I think those limitations are something that should have flexibility, because if you have a strong performer, don't make them wait to 6 years to be manager. If they've succeeded in 4 years, promote them early. Keep giving them goals to attain, and not leaving them in positions without the ability to attain more goals. And hopefully, at least for the high performers, you'll see that they don't turn over as long as you just keep making the bar that they're setting for you. Right. So again, just conversations, again, making sure you know what they want too. But unfortunately, we are all planning for turnover. So not something that's great.
Yeah, great point, Diane. And thank you, Kelsey. I think that is our last question currently. If you want to go to the last slide.
Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions they want to throw in the chat? I know we have a couple more minutes here too, if you have any.
Well, we're happy to take any of your questions after this. So if something comes to mind and you want to learn more about any of the items we discussed, please reach out. You can reach out here. One of us will get back to you. And if we don't know the answer to the question, we'll get another expert at Armanino to help answer that question.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys, everyone, for attending. Just a reminder that you guys will receive a post-webinar email, which will include a link to these slides, presentation recording, and also the links to a couple of the events we have coming up. So if you're in LA, if you're in Philly, please sign up for our AI roundtables coming up. And then also we have an AI webinar on August 20th. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.